I used to be a creature of habit. I found comfort in routines, the same coffee shop every morning, the same route to work, the same park bench for my lunch break. I thought it made my life simple and predictable. I never considered that for someone else, my predictability could be a roadmap. After what happened last fall, I live my life in deliberate chaos, and I still feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. At the time, I was working as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm in Portland, Oregon. The company was called Brightside Marketing, a cheerful name for a pretty standard office job. My favorite part of the day was my lunch break. I'd grab a sandwich from a nearby deli and walk 3 blocks to a small, quiet park, a little patch of green tucked away between tall office buildings. There was one specific bench I always sat on. It was under a large maple tree and offered a perfect, unobstructed view of a beautiful rose garden. For an hour every day, from 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m., that bench was my sanctuary. I'd eat, read a book, and just decompress from the morning's work. It was a simple, harmless routine. I saw the same cast of characters every day. A group of office workers who always ate together on the grass, an elderly man who fed the pigeons, a young mother with a toddler. It was a comfortable, anonymous community. I never spoke to any of them, but their presence was part of the routine, part of the comfort. The first time I saw him was on a crisp Monday in October. He was sitting on a bench across the garden from me. I only noticed him because he was new. He was a man in his late 40 seconds or early 50 seconds, with thinning grey hair, glasses, and a completely forgettable face. He was wearing a plain, beige jacket and nondescript trousers. The only thing that stood out about him was the bright yellow legal notepad he held in his lap. He wasn't reading or eating, he was just writing. Every few seconds, he would stop, look up, and stare intently at something for a moment, before looking down and scribbling furiously again. I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was a writer, an artist, or just someone journaling. The next day, he was there again. Same bench, same beige jacket, same yellow notepad. He repeated the same behavior. Write, look up, stare, write. This time, I tried to follow his gaze. He seemed to be looking in my general direction, at the rose garden in front of me. Maybe he's sketching the roses, I thought. It seemed plausible. He was there, every day, that week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Same time, same bench, same routine. By Friday, his presence had shifted from a minor curiosity to a low-grade source of anxiety. He never approached me, never spoke. He just sat there, scribbling on his yellow pad. The park started to feel less like a sanctuary. I felt observed. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was a public park. He had every right to be there. The following Monday, I decided to break my own routine just to see what would happen. Instead of going to my usual bench, I chose one on the other side of the park, partially hidden by a large bush. I sat down and pretended to read my book, but my eyes were fixed on his usual spot. At exactly 12:35 p.m., he arrived. He walked to his bench, sat down, and pulled out his notepad. He looked up, expecting to see me on my bench. He scanned the area, his head turning slowly. I saw his brow furrow in confusion. Then, his eyes swept across the park, and they landed on me. He found me. He stared at me for a long, unnerving moment, his expression completely blank. Then, he looked down at his pad and began to write. That was the moment the floor dropped out from under me. He wasn't sketching the roses. He wasn't a writer inspired by the park. He was watching me. My routine, my sanctuary, had been compromised. The cold red that washed over me was so intense, I felt nauseous. He knew I had changed my spot. He had been looking for me, and now he knew that I knew I couldn't stay there. I packed up my lunch, my hands trembling, and walked quickly out of the park, not looking back. I didn't go back for the rest of the week. I ate at my desk at Brightside Marketing, telling my co-workers I was busy with a deadline. But I felt trapped. Every time I looked out my office window, I half expected to see a man in a beige jacket standing on the street below, holding a yellow notepad. The next Monday, I forced myself to be brave. I told myself I wouldn't let some weirdo chase me out of my favorite spot. I walked to the park, my heart pounding. His bench was empty. My bench was empty. I sat down, a wave of relief washing over me. Maybe he had given up. Maybe it was all in my head. I opened my book and tried to relax. After a few minutes, I felt a shadow fall over me. "Excuse me," a quiet voice said. "I believe you dropped this." I looked up. It was him. He was standing right in front of me, so close I could smell the faint scent of stale coffee on his breath. He was holding out a single, folded piece of paper torn from a yellow legal pad. I don't think so, I stammered, trying to shrink back into the bench. I'm sure of it, he said, his voice flat and emotionless. He placed the paper on the bench beside me. You should be more careful with your things. He then turned and walked away without another word, disappearing around a corner. I sat there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. My mind was screaming at me to run, to leave the paper, to get away. But I couldn't. I had to know what was on it. With a shaking hand, I reached for the note and unfolded it. It wasn't a drawing. It was writing. A log. It was a detailed, minute-by-minute account of my lunch break from 2 weeks ago. 12:31 p.m. Arrives. Wearing blue coat, grey scarf. 12:34 p.m. Sits on a bench. Takes out turkey sandwich and a bottle of water. 12:47 p.m. Begins reading The Silent Patient. Page 84. 1:02 p.m. Looks at phone. Smiles at something on the screen. 1:16 p.m. Dash. Startled by a dog barking. 1:28 p.m. 0. Packs up bag. Throws trash in the bin by the east gate. 1:31 p.m. leaves bar. I dropped the paper as if it were on fire. I scrambled up from the bench and ran. I didn't go back to the office. I ran straight to the nearest police station. I was hysterical, trying to explain the situation to the officer at the desk. A man, a park, a yellow notepad. It sounded insane. It sounded flimsy. But when I showed them the note, their attitude changed. They took my statement. They sent a patrol car to the park, but of course, he was long gone. They asked for his description, but he was so painfully average, so forgettable, that he could have been anyone. The police were sympathetic, but they were honest. There was very little they could do. He hadn't technically threatened me. Just be extra vigilant, they said. Change your routines. That was the last time I ever saw him. But the encounter didn't end there. The vigilance they recommended became a prison of paranoia. I quit my job at Brightside Marketing a month later because I couldn't stand being in that part of the city. I moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood. I stopped going to my favorite coffee shop. I started taking different routes everywhere I went. My life, which had once been a comforting pattern, became a series of random, unpredictable movements. It's been almost a year now. The police never found him. There were no other reports. It was like he was a ghost who existed only for me for that 1 month. But the psychological damage was done. He took my sanctuary from me. He took my comfort and routine and replaced it with a constant, gnawing fear of being watched. He taught me that predictability is a vulnerability, and that there are people out there who hunt for patterns. I don't know what was on the other pages of his yellow notepad. Was it just me? Or were there others? Other women with their own routines, their own favorite park benches? I don't know what his ultimate plan was. Was he just a harmless, obsessive observer? Or was he gathering information for something far, far worse? I never want to find out. But every now and then, when I'm sitting in a new coffee shop or walking down a street I've never been on before, I'll see a man in a beige jacket, and my heart will stop. And I'll have to remind myself to breathe and to keep moving. Because standing still is the most dangerous thing you can do.